Welcome to the Great Security Debate. This show has experts taking sides to help broaden understanding of a topic. Therefore, it's safe to say that the views expressed are not necessarily those of the people we work with or for. Heck, they may not even represent our own views as we take a position for the sake of the debate. Our website is greatsecuritydebate.net, and you can contact us via email at feedback@greatsecuritydebate.net or on Twitter @SecurityDebate. Now, let's join the debate already in progress.
An AI agent, right?
Yeah.
And they use that to kind of show them like, hey, you know, with the advent of scattered spider and all this other stuff, right? Like, this is what we have to be aware of, right? So this is why we need to come up with questions.
Do it as a
to be able to
demonstration
ask.
tool, but I would never, ever deploy it against a person unknowingly.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting as a demonstration tool.
Yeah.
I'm working with some companies that are doing things like agentic tabletop exercises where the agents perform the roles of people that are not in the room. And it's very cool.
Oh, really?
Like, it's awesome, but it's all above board. Like, everybody knows what's playing. So it can use your people, it can use your company, it puts information about, like, it gathered. It's actually quite cool with it. But you can make, like we were talking about, you make one of the agents your CFO. You can program it, you can talk it, you bring it in risk tolerance, you can bring in, you know, decision documents into the learning for it, you know, things like that. So it becomes very realistic. And then that person doesn't necessarily have to be in the room, but can start to give some ideas of how that person would react, even if they can't be in the tabletop. So it's a neat educational tool, a neat testing tool. Like, you know, how would are we, and then the other thing is, yeah, potentially how are we doing against our playbook?
Can we dig into that just a little bit? Cause like, I feel like a lot of people hear the word agentic. If we can remove the word agentic from this conversation, hear the word AI, but let's talk agent, but like persona.
Persona,
right?
yeah.
So a persona. And Dan, you were privy to when we were sitting down having the conversation about, is AI or is agentic or is
AI just a big search
models?
engine?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just a really cool search engine, right? But technically, now we're saying this persona. So you have somebody that's part of the tabletop exercise. Each person that comes in, right? Your CFO, your legal team, your CISO, whoever it is, each person is a knowledge base, right? For their particular skill set and their particular job, right? Your brain is your search engine of all this knowledge you've obtained over years and problems you've ran into. Okay. And if that person can't be in the room and you're like, okay, we're going to insert this agent, this persona, this CFO, this Eric Willie, this Dan Ayala, right? Because we need that person, that agent, to learn from Dan all the things he does, right? And the requirements he's put in place, the policies he has. So if Dan isn't able to be here right now to answer this question, can we ask Dan's agent, right? I mean, this is why sports people have agents, right? But for totally different purposes, because the sports person doesn't know any of the shit going on.
Yeah.
He needs an agent to explain to him, is it good? Right? And you're going to take 40%. That's good, right? It's great.
Well, I'll start with, I think the security people need the agents too, not in that way, but in the going and getting them better salaries and negotiating it out. And then you just show up and go, all the ill will was between my agent and you. Let's start off on the right foot. But I mean, the idea of an agent version of you is great, but I think also really scary for people. Because it is it is perceived as one step closer toward not really needing that person. So I think people will go in a little bit, could go in a little bit hesitant, but the idea that you just mentioned of, having an agent that can supplement you is really quite cool. The question is, can people get beyond the knowledge is power mindset enough to dump all the relevant information in about them? Then the question is, what are the ethics of continuing to use that agent after I stop working at the company, or if I stop being part of that function? Do you retain the rights to my knowledge? It's a super, like, there's 100 different avenues to go down on that question. It's phenomenal.
Well, and I think that question is a pertinent question because like you look at music, you look at videos, you look at art and all of that, right? And what can be done in marketing using it, right? And it's like, yeah, but where did it get this in order to create this, right?
A
Same thing with
licensable
music,
Dan agent. You can license
right?
me for your incident response, or you can get the real me for 1/3 the price. The agent should cost more.
I mean, let's be honest. If we could make 6 Dans, we'd have a pretty good practice, right? I'd be like, oh, you need some consulting work? Dan A is busy, but Dan B and C have some availability. Dan D, he's going to be tied up for like 2 months, maybe, right? Dan F is still going through a little bit of training. He had a little
Not
bit of
to be
hallucination last week.
Not to be confused with F Dan.
Yeah, that's a whole other movement. Well, all I can think of in that, Brian, is the movie Multiplicity. Michael Keaton. Every copy of the copy is a little more wonky, and you get to Dan F, and it's just blurry. But now we can do
maybe
digital,
that person had a
digital
really good
recreations.
negotiation. They're like, I'm only willing to spend $5, right? And you're like,
Well,
go ahead and give them F Dan.
then you get No, a super interesting idea. And then to use an overused term of Copilot, that is really where the Copilot idea becomes really, really novel, and I think appropriate, because it is the sidecar that could sit next to you, even to whisper in your own ear and remind you of the things that you knew at one point, and say, hey, at this point in an incident, look at this, or at this, at this juncture in a comprehensive program, here's the thing that you missed, or that would come next. Just it doesn't even have to just be.
It totally makes sense. We can't get people to document their processes and what we're doing today, but you're going to keep a Copilot updated as a persona of you.
No, but now I'm going to take every lick of my own privacy mindset and my own security mindset out of the commentary, and think about this in a true physics problem. Everything's in a vacuum. Everything works perfectly and there's no friction. Think about the idea of something that shadows you all day. Think of the old dictaphone tape recorder. It just shadows you, and the commentary that comes out, the things that come in, the analysis, the writing you do pipes right on in, and it has learned without friction. Now, the fear of all of that information being there and how it's used and who will use it, and the general lack of trust that comes about tech, and all the reasons people don't put things in. There's a reason. The reason I don't use a lot of this stuff isn't because I don't think it's great and very useful. It's the ancillary. What else are they going to do with it? I had to connect a bank account up to Plaid so that we can write paychecks to you guys yesterday. And as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, well, why do they need this information? And what else are they going to do with transaction data? Like, there's all sorts of these things that give me pause. Yeah. They're really
when
useful.
I was connecting to it, and it was saying like I'm okay with you connecting to validate that that's my account, but it's like, we need to look at all your transaction data, et cetera. I'm like,
by the way, there is still a manual way, the old way, where it puts 2 deposits in, and then you tell it was 2 cents and 4 cents, and then it takes the money back out. So you validate that the account is yours, but then they just don't see anything anymore. And that's the way I ended up doing it. But it's this trust. Like, there's so much opportunity, Eric, to take all this stuff in and use it. But if it weren't for the lack of trust,
do I have a red flag? Where's my bullshit flag?
Sir Eric is here.
The whole problem with that, though, is if anything that is following you, listening to you, watching you is only getting the end result. What somebody is actually paying for and hiring somebody like Dan to come into an organization while you're running things is not the end result, but how you think about it, because how you think about it informs what you actually do. It has no context to understand how you even got to the decision.
Yeah, fair play.
Have you ever seen Prompts AI?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so not Prompts, the security tool, prompts.ai. So basically, it teaches you how to prompt, right? And uses every large language model, right? So it's like crowdsourcing it together. But here's the interesting part. it shows you can go back and see how they got there, right? Like, and how they built what I'll refer to as the
But
fuzzy
Dan doesn't
logic.
have that. We can't
Well,
follow the trail, and nor do we want to see the
Oh
trail. of
no,
how
trust me. So my wife
might be
regularly
able to.
asks me, "How did you get there?" Like you jump from
Don't worry
thought
about
A to thought B, which are like thought A to thought kumquat, you know, and like, how did you get there? And it's a very long and winding
able to
path.
ask Dan A, so how did you get there, right? And it would explain what it perceived as the steps, right? Which then Dan could look at and say, well, that's true, but what it's missing is this, this, and this. So then it's getting better, right? Iteration. And just
Sure,
like
Dan
you're
can walk it through that. I was sitting in the car one day. I was driving to the local Starbucks listening to Take On Me, which all of a sudden triggered a thought in my head, which solved the problem. I was like, sure,
So-
well, yeah, we'll hand that off to
So
AI.
you know what this
and then you're going to find like agentic AI is going to start listening to better music, right?
but well, yes, definitely. Take On Me, very high quality.
And then who defines what better is?
But Eric, haven't we already gotten close to that with the idea of vlogs and the idea of people posting their every move and the things they do? Like, there's already a potential for people who post, I made a cheese sandwich because I thought about a newspaper, you know, they're putting this kind of stuff out there, or we have.
The answer is no. The answer is no, because that's all predicated on that it's an actual insight into how somebody's actually thinking, how somebody's actually acting, versus me altering what I'm doing because I know that it's going to gain eyeballs.
The version of you. Yes, good, very fair point. Yeah, true. That would require the Instagram life to be a real life.
Could you imagine the agent sitting there in the tabletop and they're like, so Dan, how did you get there? Right. And the agent says, so my recommendation to everybody in this room, because legal sucks, is to go make a ham sandwich, right? Because it's reiterating, like Dan thought legal sucks in this situation, and it's taking that, and then it's like, and I recommend for this person to go make a ham sandwich, and everyone's like,
as long as I'm the one guiding that, then it's going to be perfect. As long as I'm the one where my thoughts are the ones that can go back to legal and say, here's how you need to be better, this is going to work great. But now think about the arbitration between opinions.
Dear God, help us.
But now let's kind of back out of the vacuum part though and go back to the fact
And we
that,
now know why RoboCop went rogue.
Yeah,
but we have a statue now, so we're
true.
good.
But it's almost like the robotic RPA, right? Like if you can take some of that automation and process, right? So the question to the agent, right, in this case isn't how you got there, but it's
the self-creating macro. Okay.
This goes to this. This goes to this. We noticed you do this a lot, so we're going to create an automation for this to this and save you half a second. Exactly.
Like what's the process and requirement, right? Because this happened, what do we need to do next? And then why do we need to do that? And what's the impact if we don't do that on time, right?
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. And it gives them all that. It's like, okay, great. Even if it was documented somewhere and they just didn't know where to get it, even though they've been told they know where to get it. Remember, you went in the beginning, you said, so this thing's going to follow me around, but it's only going to know the end game. What do our children do? They follow us around to learn, right? And then understand the end game. But what they see, right? And this is why words matter. How we say things, the tone that we use when we say it has a big impact on their feeling of, am I capable of doing this on my own? Because even though the way I said it to them, I believe you're capable, the tone I used was, you're never going to succeed at this, right? The AI agent doesn't think that way.
But it's not impossible that it could. You could give it the same.
I did not foresee this episode going to a parenting lesson. Continue.
How do we parent our AI agent is what I'm asking.
Think about this. I'm going to go to automotive before Brian gets there, just because I can.
Is this allowed in the bylaws?
It is.
Yes,
it is. I think I have to pay a royalty.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's go back and look at the creme de the pinnacle of manufacturing operations in automotive. I think most of us would argue is the Toyota production system, right? Toyota did it extremely well. Why? Because of their culture that was ingrained. Look at the companies that try to take it. Well, we see what you're actually, the physical movements of it, and we're going to try to replicate that. Did it work? No, it didn't work because the infusion of culture was never there. It's the same thing with AI, that if you're just looking at the end result and trying to mimic that, it'd be the same thing if our kids became just purely robots of us based on what they see without any context and making it their own. God help us all.
Agreed.
But
But let's go to I want to say it's Ono, right? You know,
Hey,
at the
John.
very like 81 years of age, right? And he still said I had so much still to learn on the Toyota production system, right?
Mhm.
And his ability to teach people, etc. As you're learning, like in Toyota's principles, very much Genshin Genbutsu, go and see for yourself, learn and apply, right?
Path I
Go
just
to
started.
go to the assembly line, right? And this is what makes great leaders, right? Even if you're in security or you're in IT or you're in HR, the people that you represent, right? And the technologies you're giving them to be successful. I was just having this conversation with my wife, like the hours spent doing this, and this. It's like, you do realize that there's a better way to do this. But the problem is IT teams don't understand what your actual hands-on job is, right? So like when we were talking about an AI agent, before that AI agent follows you along, there's first somebody that comes in and does the interview with you. Like, so what's your job, right? What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
I
What's
wouldn't
your
say I've
role,
been
right? And
missing
you
it, Bob.
explain that, but they don't actually get to see, like, so what takes up the majority of your time? Well, here, let me show you, like when my kids go to bed from 9 till midnight, I am up reformatting all these spreadsheets, putting this in. I got to take this information from this team, put it into metric. Then I got to take this and like I created a system to do it, but there's nuance when this happens and when this changes. Interesting. You know, we could create a solution that could help solve this busy work problem and your ability to ask it questions to get what's the output you're looking for. But that's something your team, your technology team should understand. What are the limitations? Like, and I'm going to use Kelly as the example. Kelly, if you're spending an additional 4 hours or 3 hours a day doing all of this, right? And you guys wanted to get more and more business, then you'd need 5 more Kellys. But then when you bring those people in, you'd have to transfer Kelly's knowledge and understanding of how to do that and do it fast, right? Or else it's not, that's a year, 2 year, 3 year curve, right? But if you had Kelly A, B, and C, just like Dan, not the F Dan, but the A, B, and C Dan, and you're able to take some of those processes to say, hey, we don't need to do everything Dan does, but there's certain key attributes that would take other people this long, right, to learn how to do that part, that creation piece, right, of some of the documentation and change control and everything else that he puts together and the why, as he's able to teach that or explain that is very helpful. So in the Toyota principle way, right, the years it takes somebody as they mature through the organization to learn all, and this is why in the Toyota mindset, it was always, don't remove somebody from the assembly line and just keep removing until everyone screams. And then it's like, okay, that's the speed we're going to operate with the least number of people to make the most amount of money. It was take the people and rotate them to all different processes, right? Every 6 months. This way, if someone isn't there, this person knows that. Make the worker more intelligent, right? So just like that agent that you're trying to make more intelligent, it's not to replace you. It's so that when that person's unavailable, can they do that? The problem is culturally in humanity, the way we operate is, oh, but it can do most of what they do. We can get rid of that person, save some money.
Right.
This goes back to like the Ford principles versus the Toyota way. And then when the Toyota way came out, everybody was like, oh, let's learn that. But we can't call it the Toyota way. It has to be our way. We'll call it Six Sigma. And we'll give people black belts because it's kind of like karate. Sounds cool. And I'm totally making fun of it right now. But the reality is the principles followed that same line. They just had to indoctrinate their own culture into it to get buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with you, Eric. But that training of Eric A and Eric B, right? Like, look at the value you have of all your security understanding, but you don't have 4 hours a day to be able to pass that knowledge down, right? But if somebody could query Eric A to look for this or ask this, right? And then you're just explaining why. It's kind of reminds me of some of the solutions I've seen come out today, where it's solutions that manage different cloud architecture and so forth. And what it's telling you to do is generated by a computer. But they actually, those companies are putting people on the back end to say, okay, the AI generated this. Is that correct? So instead of the person spending all the time to search through it all, it's letting it generate it, they're reading it, and then they're passing that on to the customer.
Yeah.
So they're helping with those processes.
I'm not convinced. I'm not there. I think for me, this goes back to the same argument that we had long ago, where it was told to me essentially that you could turn security into, you could create a single run book that takes care of all incidents in security. And I would make the argument you absolutely cannot.
Of course
And
not.
even if you try to and you believe that you've gotten there, all it's going to do is breed complacency that you don't have to innovate because you think you have all of the answers in this book. As soon as we start to create the digital instantiation of a person that is now fixed in time, right? Because it only knows what I know now without the curiosity to challenge, to learn, to grow, to change. That's what you really need to be mimicking if you're trying to, let's say, Eric AI or whatever, that if you're trying to mimic, my value proposition is the curiosity to continue to challenge the decision I made yesterday. Today, I look at it and go, oh, that's crap, right? You cannot mimic that yet in AI.
But that's
a
a difference.
It's super dangerous because I think what we're going to see, everybody is off to the races, and AI has a great ability to cut through the monotony, right? You talk about RPA. This is the next evolution that, hey, there's this fixed task where, it's lost. I hit the red button every day. Sure, it can take over and do some of those things so we can free up humans to do something that is more value add. But what I see is you're going to get this productivity increase and then a huge freaking plateau, which is going to bite us in the long run. Because what it's going to do is we're going to sit by and go, hey, the AI is already doing this process for me. Therefore, I don't have to challenge. I'm going to go do something else. Nobody's going to ask, should it still be done that way? That's where you still need humans.
Yep. The Rube Goldberg, and then you look 10 years down the road and you've got this amazing collection of processes that made sense at the time, but no one's ever looked at the holistic thing, which I think is an interesting place for the role of the people
AI overlord that watches the other AIs. Oh,
eventually. But the person, the people who, this notion, and this came, going back to manufacturing, the idea of the robot, and the robot replacing the human, but then the roles that the humans played turned into those who developed the robots, those who maintained the robots, managed and dealt with the people doing the mechanical automation. I think we see the same thing here, where it is not an AI event yet that's watching the AIs, but rather the enterprise architect mindset, the one who's sitting there and staring at it and going, big picture, if we move this and this and this, we can change this and make this more efficient. Or this is no longer a necessary component of this if we bypass this. You still have the need for the architect to look at the end-to-end process and develop it, and address it. The question is, can you or should you use automation to make it happen? The other thing you made a comment on, Eric, was the idea that that this is a point in time entity. And I disagree. I think this is a case, if you left it as a point in time entity, then the complacency could come in. But if you were to continue to let it learn, if you were to continue to feed it the new Dan thoughts, the new Eric thoughts as things were going on, the new developments, the things we were working on, especially in those architecture ideas or the how we got theirs, the commentary track, it wouldn't have to be a moment in time, and it could provide a little more inference.
Isn't that a fallacy, Dan, though? They're not really learning. This is
no, they could take our learnings and incorporate them into their methodologies.
Essentially, you're using an AI to create a knowledge base of things that you feed it.
Yeah.
It's not really learning.
Well,
right?
no,
All you're doing
using
is
using the parlance that listeners will understand, learning. No, it's not learning. It's just adding additional data sets to the. This is just what we call AI today is just a big data problem.
It really is.
Solved at scale.
AI is just a mathematical way of finding data quickly.
Yeah. Agreed. But it's sucking up a lot of power, and it is helping with automation. It is helping with some of those kinds of things. Can we count on it for too many things? I don't know, but the idea of sitting as a sidecar to me to remind me of the things I didn't do, that I don't have to go after and check and, you know, do a checklist. It does the checklist for me and goes, Dan, next, you need to make sure to call the insurance company. You know, that kind of thing would be awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, going back to like the definition of what work is, right? What is work?
Force times acceleration. No, that's
Okay.
there's a what is it?
There's a time part of the equation.
My physics
work
professor would be
is-
so upset with me right now.
Yeah, is a force, and the distance moved is the direction of that force, right?
Yeah.
So when
No,
you break
force
it all
times
down, there's
distance.
also
That's it. Not force times acceleration.
yeah, force times distance. So then what does force equal, right? Distance is measurable, right?
Mhm.
So
force is exertion. Force is an excel. Yeah, it'd be, well, in physics, it's a calculable item.
second law of motion.
Mhm.
So
I'm
then
just
that
sitting back
has
going, where's he going with this?
I don't know, but I'm eager to hear.
yeah, the second law of motion. So
I
it
gotta go grab
has
some
mass.
popcorn. Hold on.
It has mass times acceleration. And acceleration has a time component to it, right?
Yeah.
So in all work, there's a certain time component. Most humans look at work as I go to work and do 8 hours a day, and that 8 hours a day equates to 8 hours times $1 per hour that I'm paid, and that's
Mhm.
what I'm paid to do, right? Finance looks at it that way too. They don't break it down to say, well, technically work equals, all the way down to looking at force and mass times acceleration. But the point here is, Dan, you talked about the idea of having a sidecar, something that can remind you of this and that. To get to where that can do that today, the amount of data that's become available for it to understand, Dan, right? All the different applications that have access to all the different things you use, tools, calendars, email, your communications, etc., allows it to help do that for you, right?
Mhm.
But in order to do that, there's a certain amount of energy that is used in a very quick amount of time, but it's that energy consumption. Is the means, that energy consumption, worth the output that Dan, or the end all, like you said, Eric, that Dan gets? And then how do we measure really what that is?
Are we talking about energy consumption as in energy creation from a power plant, or energy consumption in looking at somebody's mind to accomplish something?
Yes.
Both, meaning the difference between the two. And this is where, from a human aspect, right, it's important we challenge ourselves to grow. Why do we continue to read books? To make the mind think about things in different ways. Why is it good to have teams of different people and different cultures? Because if you had teams of everybody that thinks the same way, you're not really learning, and then you're all agreeing and you're trying to make it, this goes back to a different Tolstoy quote. And it's the idea of challenging yourself to look at things in different ways, right? And that's where you learn from the mistakes you make, etc. Now, the agent, or the agentic AI, or this large language model, the compute power necessary and the energy consumption from Mother Earth. And I'm going to call her Mother Earth, right? Because there's a great book called The Matricide, The Killing of the Mother. And this goes into social science, the nurture versus nature. Mother Earth's energy that we are consuming so that we can make decisions faster, better, smarter, and replace ourselves. I think we're the only organism on Earth that's like, well, we're not trying to replace ourselves, but if we could make a lot of money doing it, why not? Right? Like, I'm not sure how everyone's going to survive once these giant data centers are cleaning out all the answers I need. There's a really cool book called, or movie for the kids called the one where they cut down all the trees and they make the hats, and then all the trees are gone. So then the guy sells them air.
Lorax.
The Lorax, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, at some point,
I thought we were calling it the modern American policy on natural forests, or on national parks.
We agreed not to touch politics.
Sorry.
Dan, what is a forest and why are we protecting it?
Who needs
That land
trees?
could be used for other things like opening up, drilling, and fracking.
That's right.
I mean,
Okay.
Carbon dioxide can be created by data centers.
Think about this though. I agree with the sidecar analogy,
Mhm.
right? As I look at it, I use perplexity quite a bit. Why? Because perplexity allows me I can kick off some research over here instead of me having to go through Google, read everything, and bring it back. I can cut through some of the noise and then I can go do something else. So there's a lot of productivity gains there. But I think
Interrupting just for a second. Hey, Dan, Eric just agreed with us that AI is just an awesome search engine.
And it really is just a search engine.
Yeah, well,
Keep going.
that's kind of where I'm going with it. Look at what an LLM is actually doing. It's mathematically trying to predict what's coming next.
Mhm.
So if that's the case, then that's predicated on things, the sequence of events or the sequence that we've historically seen on language, on the connectivity, on data. That does not lend itself to creating net new creative ideas. And kind of what Brian was talking about, that you read books to think differently about things. That I think in many cases, AI is going to further marginalize the nuanced ideas that are truly revolutionary and make big advances, right? That if we think about like the concept of bricolage that says there's really nothing truly new, right? It's just a rearranging of different things. Well, if everything we do is predicated on past norms of how we put things together and we become more and more reliant of that, do we start to remove the ability of people to be creative and think completely different than we've thought in the past?
Yes. I think I agree with everything you said. There is it's going to regenerate based on what we've done in the past. I think you combine that with there are some tendencies. This is not political. I think this is socio-political. You see tendencies in modern society that are paralleling those of the end of the Roman Empire. How can I do things so that I don't have to do work and I can focus on things that are pleasurable to me? There's a hedonism. There's a hedonism that has shown up over the past 50 years in the world, but in the US as well, US quite heavily. And this feeds into it. How can I offload work? What is work? So that I can go spend more time doing fun things or whatever. But you're right. I think it does stop innovation. It stifles the brain. The brain is what got us here. And we can't offload the brain. The brain is a wonderful, magical item. And one we don't even fully understand yet. And as a result, we can't expect that something we've created. And again, you remember, I've been studying AI since undergrad, and not a lot has changed. We've just found ways to better apply it. We have bigger storage and memory systems.
Computer, right?
Yes, we had electricity. We barely had electricity, but we had the internet.
It was just in a van, and you had to wait for
it was very slow and dial-up-y. But the advancements have been around the ability to accelerate processing time and the size of the data sets that can be used, and the presentation models. So like all of these things are not necessarily that we've done better at creating thinking technology. We've just done a better way. We have a better way to inquire it and to extract it. And so I agree with what you said, Eric. It will only get us so far. So then the question is, as a sidecar, it's a great idea because it just reminds me of the things I need to remember. It's a search engine. Search the checklist, tell me the things that didn't go. So it's like search engine plus. And it's never going to derive something new. It's just going to help you find things that are really exciting or that are identified or identifiable in a data set you've already given it.
Depending on how you use it, because I will counter my own point. Being cognitive of what the over reliance on it can create, that if we can go in with that mindset and kind of curb how we're actually using it, I think that's where it can be creative, that it can be used as a catalyst where it can cut through some of the time I have to spend up front ideating, coming up with different things, right? And bring it back for me to synthesize the macro vision, the macro ideas that it's pulled together.
Yeah. I think about this just from the standpoint, like because some of the sub agencies I work with, integrators, et cetera, the time it takes to put together an SOW, right? And this is why they're like, well, how serious is this customer? Because if we spend, 10 hours putting this together, just as like,
Ryan, you're not going to need that anymore. Hey, connect your agent with my agent. The AI will figure out the terms and just agree on it. We're good.
it's crazy. Like they're like, yeah, we can produce, 20-page SOWs really quick, right? Take all the information requirements that the customer just said in the meeting that my AI agent was keeping track of. Like from a meeting note standpoint, great.
Yeah, but
Like,
that's not generation. That's not the novel. That's just regurgitating.
Regurgitation. But then it takes the notes and dumps that into the requirements, right? Here's everything that the customer required. Here, boom, put together, right?
Mhm.
Or the customer's looking at these 4 solutions. It's like, hey, I need you to pull together all 4 of those solutions, but particularly I want to compare these 3 attributes, right? I also need to know what type of integrations it has with these solutions, because this is what the customer said is, pulls together all that information for me faster than me flipping back through my notes, pulling this up. So they have this, and that, and it just does it. Now, I put this note up in our chat. The value lies, and this is Google telling me this. I didn't ask
Was it Google
the
AI?
Copilot or the Gemini because I was afraid they'd lie to me because they want to survive, right? Like the iRobot. But it said the value lies not in reducing power, computational energy, but in leveraging that processing power to achieve outcomes that are difficult, slow, or impossible for humans to manage alone.
Yeah.
Now, the slow, I will agree with. The difficult, eye of the beholder, right? It's difficult that allows us to then understand how to do things better and faster. And Eric, like you said, we need that. Impossible for humans to manage alone. Most of what people are using it for is not for the impossible task.
Not at all.
No.
Not
It comes down to the definition of like, why are we here on Earth, right? Here's the kumbaya moment, right? Are we here to make humanity better and make Mother Earth last longer, right? Are we here to try to make more money, right? And like at the end of the day, the decisions that the boards and people are making are very much about money, right? And it's fascinating because like a yen rate changes, the US dollar, the strength of the dollar changes, et cetera. It's like, the strength of the dollar just weakened by X. Mr. Employer, I'm going to go ahead and need a 5X pay increase because the dollar's not as strong anymore. And that's what you pay me. My strength hasn't changed. I'm still Brian, and I got Brian A, B, and C too lined up. So come on, let's go. Right. If that's what we're truly like, kumbaya moment, this whole solution we've created eats a lot of Mother Earth. What are we here on Earth to do? Is it to protect Mother Earth, right? Is it just to make money?
Well,
and don't ask the AI, Dan. I see you typing into Dan A, B, and C to see what it has to say.
I'm automatically connected. Like the people in Pluribus, they already know. All the AIs of me know,
show.
which by the way, it's a phenomenal show. Really interesting concept and very thought provoking.
I mean, going back to Brian's micro segment on parenting, like this is one of the big impacts that I see. I think it's going to exacerbate what we see, the effect of social media on younger generations, right? As we look at the younger generations, most of their interactions now come on a phone, right? That we can't have a face-to-face conversation. I'll hit you up on I don't even know what the latest social media is that we're using.
I'll just text you from the other room in the house.
Yeah, and now you infuse AI into that I think it's going to it has the potential to further push some of those generations down a technical rabbit hole where they become so isolated from technology that you start to lose some of those human elements unless we make a honest effort to start pulling them back and putting them in a room and so they can learn to actually have a conversation.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
Yeah. But I'm there with you on the parenting part. And like the conversation we were having earlier, right? And I'm in the car with my children and one of the children says to me, well, Dad, you're right. Mom should have sent that to you in the calendar so you knew. And it's like, well, not exactly, sweetie. I love that you're sticking up for me right now, but here, and then you have to explain the why, right? But without doing that, I could have been like, no, you're absolutely right, right? Because I think I'm right. But then the model I'm training is somewhat wrong, right? Like this isn't about right or wrong, sweetie. This is about us learning to work together better from a communication. I failed to read all the notes, right? That's on me. Now I had Brian B that reads all of my text messages and then brings Kelly's to the top, right? Like, what are the priority in messages? Kelly number one, then Eric/Dan, right? I don't want to discount you guys while we're on together, right? And then everybody else. Then it would have told me the things I was supposed to do last night, which I totally failed to do, right? But your children watch your interactions. They see that and they learn. And they
Mhm.
also feel for you too when you feel like they feel like one of you got in trouble and they want you to feel better just like you do for them. So they try to say, "It's okay, Dad. Dad should have done this or mom should have done that." It's like teaching moment, no. And here's why, right? So it's those human interactions that make us better, closer, because we're here on earth for humanity, civility.
And that's where I'm going to take a shot at the default settings of what I'll say of the LLMs that are more pervasive today, right? Because I think that becomes an issue. Because just say like Brian, well, no. Well, have you ever put anything into any of the AI tools that have told you that? Everyone that I have used is a complete echo chamber for whatever I give it, unless I explicitly tell it, I want you to play a different role and challenge me. And I think that's creating a huge issue. If you look at now, so I picked on the younger generation, pick on the older generations that frankly did not come up with the internet, and I almost feel bad because they never really learned how to use it, and that's how you get that people are eating babies.
Mom and Dad, he's not talking about you, I promise.
I'm
No, I was talking to my parents.
Oh, okay. I might be no. But if you think about that, I feel like that's also one of the myths of the boat, that we put this technology out there and we go, well, we're just going to give it a blank persona. Hey, here you go figure it out. Like, I was using Perplexity to come up with a team building exercise for some leadership meetings that we were having, and I had found something super cool to do with Legos a couple weeks ago. So this is where there's benefit, right? Because they came up with creative ideas. I'm like, oh shoot, I hadn't thought about that. Fast forward a couple weeks, and I'm going, I can't quite remember how it teed that up, how it framed it up. So I put in one of the prompts, like, hey, a couple of weeks ago you told me about this Lego exercise. It spit back to me as if it totally remembered what it had told me. And I go, well, that isn't really how I remember it. And it literally comes back, oh, you got me. I don't have access to that. I can't remember that. But totally gave me the information as if it was something that, yeah, this is totally what I just fed you.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So it bodes the question. Two things come to mind. One, should a system like this require a level of test, of confirmation? Because you have to use it with, you have to take the results with a grain of salt. You have to be aware enough. And people say, oh yeah, I understand. It's a dumb system and it hallucinates. But should you have to prove that you really understand that before you're allowed to use it? And then conversely, one sec, Brian. Conversely, think about the motivators of all the systems you're using.
That actually works to hold Brian up. So just keep an eye on how Dan
1 second, Brian, hang on. One more thing. The motivators of the systems is not necessarily about giving you the answer. Eric, you talked about this, that the responses being very echo chamber, very what you want to hear. Think about it in terms of these little tidbits that are coming about OpenAI potentially putting ads in. Guess what? We're back to engagement. I'm going to tell you what you want to hear so you continue using it so I can show you more ads. These are two sides of the coin that need to be taken into account with using the system. Brian.
It's almost like we've
gone. Brian. No, I'm just playing.
It's almost like we've gone beyond that and what I mean by this is the checks and balances with the way social media works today, where it's completely almost replaced true reporting, because once something's out there and it's been viewed before it can be taken down, it's in someone's head, right?
Yep.
And it could take months, years to get someone to change that. And so when people talk about hack the elections, like, well, they were in the computers, right? like I heard they voted for that other president, right? It's like, the you just say? Seriously? but they don't understand that. Like,
Right.
I'm like, no, they're in your head.
But this
like,
should you be back to there? Should you be licensed? Should you need to be licensed to use the internet? And I think it's only bigger about should you be licensed to be able to use some of these public systems to know that you're going to take the responses in the right way and based on the maturity of the technology underneath it.
but that's where I'm going even further now. Like, it's almost been accepted, like, well, there's no slowing that down because we just got to keep that stuff pumping out. Like, we're not going to let any government control say that we just can't let things be blasted out there on all these different platforms. Then it's okay. Well, then with AI though, if this is Dan 2.0, right? Or whatever it is that's feeding us information or results or knowledge, right? What are the checks and balances? And this goes back to the conversation we had when Elon was saying, well, no, some of the stuff's fixable. If there's gaps, we just fill it in with the right information. And if there's stuff that shouldn't be in there that's bad, we just delete it, right? It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's like saying we're going to burn the books that we don't want people to read because we think those are bad books. No,
We've never done that in our society ever, Brian.
No, exactly. That's why.
But I taking a different approach, Dan, because I like where you're heading. I don't think it's a license to use, but I think we need to think in the context of what are the default settings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of why I led with this. That it almost, if we think about the AI, it's all around grounding, right? The more grounded something is, it's tightly knit to the data set that we know is of some truth. The less we ground it, it starts to go off on its own and it starts to create its own truths and stuff like that. I almost feel like that it's got to be kind of an unlocking through learning, right? That you start very tightly knit that, hey, these are the sources that are truth until you can prove that you can do something with that. And then, okay, we're going to start to let the reins off a little bit and allow it to start to creep outside of that.
So since we've seen how well gamification works in things, the idea of when I start a video game, I only get these 3 capabilities until I've proven I can use them. And then I get more and more and more.
My parents are only allowed to pull from encyclopedias. It gets grounded.
There you go. And with that, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thanks, Eric, and thanks, Brian. This is a great discussion. And someday we'll just put AI Eric and AI Brian and F Dan into a virtual Zoom room and let them make the podcast on their own, and it'll sound like a bunch of Furbies just talking to each other. But for now, we'll see the both of you in 2 weeks. Thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks for viewing. We love getting your feedback. You can send us a message to an email, if you still use that antiquated email technology, to security@distillingsecurity.com. You can get all of our episodes on distillingsecurity.com on YouTube, youtube.com/Great Security Debate. And you can not find us on Twitter. We're there, but we don't use it much. I don't think anybody calls it Twitter anymore. And that's part of the problem. But anyhow, we'll see you again on the next Great Security Debate.